views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers, editors, journalists, filmmakers, photographers, anybody who puts stuff out in the Bronx, trying to give you some insight into what it is that they are writing or talking about. And also this evening, we're going to be talking about one of the Bronx's most well-known newspapers, most popular newspapers. They're having an anniversary and also putting out a very interesting list of Bronxites. But to start, let's go to Ben Adler, who's the senior climate editor for Yahoo News. Nice to have you with us, Ben.
Thank you for having me.
We should mention that we first got in touch with Ben when he was senior editor and sometime contributor to City and State New York. And that really is the subject that inspired this interview. They had their 15th anniversary. Ben wrote the cover story about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it basically was how AOC and the left reinvented New York City politics. And so I want to talk about that and delve into that. I do want to start with a bit of context, a bit of history. There you can see the article. We interviewed Robert Abrams, who was Bronx Borough president and also Attorney General in the state of New York. And he was into women's rights and LGBT rights and the environment and breaking apart corporations and all that sort of thing. But he didn't get where AOC got, and he didn't move the needle dramatically as she seems to have. So is this something that we get every 5 years, every 20 years, or is this really a once in a lifetime happenstance that a figure comes out and reinvents New York politics, as you said it?
I think what has happened with AOC is that she was the first of a wave of young first-time candidates, most of them women, the vast majority of them people of color, in other states as well, but most concentrated in New York State and especially in New York City, who challenged the Democratic incumbents or the establishment choice in a lot of races. They haven't always won, and some of them had run previously unsuccessfully in a few cases, but a lot of them have won in 2018, 2020, and now a few council races in 2021 as well. And they've pulled the center of gravity to the left in every body that they've joined. They haven't necessarily gotten a ton of really ambitious legislation passed, but they have totally changed the dynamic around re-election and the center of gravity in the Democratic Party in New York.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned it earlier. We had done an interview with 3 of the new assembly members who are going to be representing the Bronx in Albany. They already are. Each one of them, a person of color, certainly younger, no older than 30 or 35. And when I asked them a similar kind of question about, was AOC the one that did this? The answer I got back, this was from Amanda Septimo, Assembly Member Septimo. She said, we credit AOC for what she's done, but there have been a groundswell of grassroots organizations and grassroots efforts that paved the way for her to do what she did. I was pleased in your piece for City and State New York that you interviewed Amanda Farias, and she essentially said the same thing.
Yeah, there are a number of groups. We mentioned some in the story: Amplify Her, Higher Heights. Of course, there's Justice Democrats that have supported these candidates. The question that is unknowable is, to what extent would these candidacies have succeeded if AOC hadn't succeeded first? To what extent did the media take other challengers more seriously and give them more attention? To what extent did activists get volunteer and donate to these candidates? were voters willing to take a chance on them? Were voters motivated to come out? Because AOC showed that it was possible to win. That was a huge upset. And you don't have polling in these local legislative races. So it's really, no one really knows if a challenger has a good chance. But it was generally assumed they didn't. But now it seems they do.
Well, yeah, I think that, and that point you made very clear in the article. We had the opportunity, and this is what goes on all the time, making decisions about which debates we want to cover. And I turned down the opportunity to run a debate between Joe Crowley and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because there were so many challengers who don't seem to have a chance against the machine. And as you correctly put in your article, she did it. Another thing that's very, very interesting to me is the use of the word socialism. And because I think it helps and it hurts, much like if they say defund the police, well, then maybe people who want to reapportion some criminal justice money to be more effective in social services. But when you say defund the police, people are like, wait a minute, I want my security, and I don't want to take money away or take police officers off the streets. So in other words, it helps and it hurts. Is the word socialism in a similar category that, yes, it helps move the needle, but it's used against the very people who talk about being socialists?
One thing that's interesting about AOC and the progressive movement in New York is that some of the candidates identify as socialists and some do not. And there isn't necessarily a lot of difference in their current policy platforms between the people who identify as socialists and the people who don't. The only industry that most of them talk about socializing is health insurance. So they're not really meeting the textbook definition of a socialist platform, which would collectivize every industry. But maybe there are underlying philosophical differences between some of these candidates that would emerge if ever the left was so strong that there was talk of going much further. We're a long way off from that point. In terms of the popular appeal of socialism or lack thereof, there's a tremendous age discrepancy. And these are young candidates and young voters who are not turned off by the label of socialism in a way that older voters tend to be. That may have to do with the legacy of the Cold War and people who remember communist countries that claimed to be socialist.
Right.
It may also have to do with the fact that younger people tend to have a dimmer view of capitalism. I mean, this is a generation that has come of age with staggering healthcare costs, climate emergency caused by fossil fuel corporations, increasing inequality, increasing cost of housing. So there's a lot more openness among younger people who in the past might have just been liberals, progressives, to a broader socialism.
You know what strikes me? It's a fascinating concept. I know legislators in New York State legislators from the Bronx who have been champions of housing rights and the environment and social services, all these things, but they are being criticized as being part of an establishment by a whole younger group of people who are saying, you know what? We kind of want to change. And I think AOC is an embodiment of that change. Do you think her notoriety helps or hurts her? Because she's challenged. I mean, I think it makes
helps or hurts her in terms of what?
In terms of, for example, we invite her on our programs. All the other Bronx Congress members come on. She, is worried. I'm assuming that if whatever she says becomes an attack point.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have assumed, she gave us an interview when she was first running against Crowley, and she doesn't speak to us anymore. I would assume that's just because she's busy and she's going on the Today Show and
that's what I mean.
Appearing on the cover of Vanity Fair. I mean, she's got better things to do than go on the Bronx Buzz or talk to City and State. Most politicians would love to trade places with her, right? I mean, it helps.
I suppose it does. You pointed out a number of things, developments in the state, expansion of access to voting, driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, strengthening of rent regulations, bail reform, a liberal and equity-focused marijuana legislation. You called it a regime in the United States and in New York State. Do you think or maybe the question is, it seems obvious this is the trend. This is the direction it's going. There are Democratic governor, Democratic leaders in both of the state houses. We're going to see more of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting is that AOC, is part of this trend of younger candidates running who are farther to the left, running against sometimes conservative and centrist Democrats, sometimes mainstream liberal Democrats, and sometimes beating them and introducing farther left legislation and so forth. Separate from that, but it's part of the same energy that arose in response to Trump's victory, is that Democrats organized to finally defeat the Independent Democratic Conference that had caucused with Republicans and kept Republicans in power in the state Senate.
Yeah, you're correct. That's another very significant moment in New York State politics that moved the needle.
And it all happened as one movement of the same kinds of young, on average younger, there are older progressives and liberals too, of course, who got involved, but on average younger, on average more diverse, but fundamentally just, liberal Democrats being fed up and saying, if, Jeff Klein, for example, is, part of the party of Trump, he can't represent me. And you get a Biaggi who beats him. You see the same, people like Ramos and Zellner Myrie. None of these people who defeated the IDC members identify as socialists. They have more of what you might call mainstream liberal or progressive views, but they're moving the center of gravity to the left as well.
And that is fascinating
legislation.
Because AOC would support Biaggi and she would also support Gustavo Rivera, whether they, as you say, identify as socialists. It's almost like a sexual orientation. How do you identify yourself? Whether they would identify as socialists. I have to tell you on a national scale, and then we got to go. On a national scale, I think this infrastructure bill, this $3.5 trillion bill, is a pretty interesting test of how far Democrats would go, how much compromise, the left will have. That's the way I see it, almost like from a political point of view, a barometer to see how we're going to do. Or also whether Biden has the talent to negotiate something as sensitive as that.
It's going to be an interesting dilemma in some ways, maybe for some people on the left. One thing about AOC and the other leftists in New York is they tend to be fairly pragmatic. And as you said, support the more progressive candidate, even if they don't agree with them on everything. They support the Biaggi or the Rivera instead of just holding out, for a far left candidate. But what are they going to do about the fact that Joe Manchin is from West Virginia and they need his vote? If he cuts down the bill, will they suck it up and support it? I think they'll have no choice. Probably they will. Yeah.
Listen, we do got to run. Ben Adler, you're great, man, and we really appreciate you taking a few minutes to be with us. We're all going to check out Yahoo News. We'll look at the climate news on Yahoo News. We thank you for joining us, and we certainly hope that you'll come back.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, and then when we do come back, we're going to talk about the Bronx Times. And I think you'll enjoy what they have to say. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from Bronx Times. struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Okay, welcome back to the Bronx Buzz. And I told you earlier, we're going to talk about the Bronx Times reporter and kind of a larger picture. We're going to talk to also the parent company of the Bronx Times is Schneps Media. And let's say good evening to two of the people from Schneps Media. And that is Demetra Mattone. Nice to have you with us, Demetra. And Tony Cimino, also from Schneps Media. And many people in the Bronx will recognize Laura Guerriero, who is the editor of the Bronx Times. Nice to have your debut on the Bronx Buzz. It's the first time, right? We can give it a little applause. We're going to start with both Demetra and Tony, who are in their office together. I think it's the first time I've had people together. Let's talk about the power list of the Bronx. This is a fascinating concept. Many people in the Bronx know who, let's say, political leaders are, but there are many people who lead in companies and communities. Talk to me about what you're developing in coordination with the Bronx Times.
So I'm Demetra, and this is Tony, and we run the events division of Schneps along with Elizabeth Aloni and Joseph Sirica. We honor people from Montauk to New York. We're very excited about honoring our Bronx Power Listers. This is our premier event honoring Power Listers of the Bronx. So Power Listers, they are the movers, the shakers, the rainmakers, the non-for-profit, the educators, the leaders of the Bronx, who we all admire and respect. And we want to say thank you to them for making the borough a much better place to live, work, and play. So, along with Tony Cimino, we would just like to give you the details of the event coming up on December 15th.
Well, before you do that, let's just get into this a little bit, and either one of you can answer this. How do you choose who is going to be in this power list? I mean, we got 1.4 million people, and I know Bronxites. If you talk to any one of them, they'll say, me. So tell me a little bit about how you select 100 out of the 1.4 million.
So what we do, we've actually, Schneps Media has had the Long Island Press Power List for 18 years. 18 years. And we also launched our Dan's Power List of the East End this year. So what we do is we convene a committee that culls from those people who are the most influential. And the committee comes together and they determine who should be on the list. Again, from the different industries, walks of life. And as Demetra said, those people who make the Bronx a better place to live, work, play, and raise a family.
Do we nominate? Like, I mean, it'd be nice.
Yeah, we nominate. There's online.
Everybody.
No, there are online nominations. So typically we get about 3,000 nominations. And then our esteemed judging panel does filter through and make recommendations. Mm-hmm. So that is how it is done. We do want all sectors of the community to be represented. So we do pick from non-for-profits and business educators, like I said, to make sure it's a well-rounded list.
Mm-hmm. So I guess anybody can nominate somebody else.
Correct.
Right. And how many? I was going to say how many. So I guess it's 100 or 50. Yes.
So you go on. It's 100. You go on BronxPowerlist.com if you'd like to nominate, or you can go to Schneps Media and go to events. You'll see a nomination form under our events division, and we welcome everyone to join in and nominate that special someone.
That special someone's not Valentine's Day. We want somebody who's actually had some effect on.
Well, that special someone who made a difference, of course.
Who made a difference? That's what we want. This is a very interesting time, I think, and I've been a reader of the Bronx Times for a very long time. So before we bring Laura into the conversation, just talk to me about the nature of the publication and why this publication more than any other in the Bronx is perfectly appropriate for this kind of activity?
So the Bronx Times has had a 40-year history of being grassroots.
I'm going to applaud while you do that. That's okay.
Yes, you're right. Embedded in the community. We work, and Laura and her team do a yeoman's job of this. We work very closely with the rainmakers, the elected officials, those people who are changing the Bronx for the better. So this is why we are so, well suited for this. We are grassroots. We're boots on the ground, and nobody knows the Bronx better than we do.
Or better than the Bronx Sun, but maybe better than Laura, although I would compete with Laura a little bit.
Well,
So
Laura
listen-
is our expert.
there you go. So I've been doing Bronx Talk, which is my other program, for 27 years, and I thought I was all that. Then I see that the Bronx Times is celebrating 40 years. And so, Laura, have you been, am I allowed to ask, have you been with the paper all this time?
I've been with the paper 34 years.
34, but who's counting?
Yeah.
Talk. I believe, and I'm an avid reader. I never miss an issue, and I read cover to cover. Talk to me about the growth of the paper right now. I mean, it used to be kind of one neighborhood or another neighborhood. You're
Right.
focusing on the East Bronx. I mean, we know that that's what the origin of the paper is. But talk to me about the expansion of the paper and where it's at now. You're covering everything in the borough.
Yeah. So it was founded in 81, and we just had the one publication, which was the Bronx Times Reporter. And then I believe it was 1983 where we came up with the Morris Park edition. And then I think it was like 1996 when we came up with 4 more editions, and that is the Bronx Times.
So what I read is, I always thought I read a general edition. I'm reading something that pertains to my neighborhood in the Van Cortlandt part of the Bronx, or Kingsbridge.
Correct.
Oh,
And then we try to put most of the same stories, because I always felt, and I still do, that you could be on the opposite end of the Bronx and you still want to know what's going on in the rest of the borough.
Well,
So-
we know each other a long time, and I feel the same way.
Exactly.
I mean, we've had politicians talk about one Bronx enough to know. But I believe that there's been tremendous growth, frankly, since Schneps Media has been involved.
Absolutely.
You have great writers, and again, instead of just reading about one part of the Bronx, we're reading about all parts of the Bronx.
Mhm.
Are there people, and I know there are, who founded the paper, who deserve the credit from the beginning,
Absolutely.
who had the vision that this is what the Bronx needs?
Yep.
Let's
So,
go.
John Colazzi and Assemblyman Michael Benedetto were the
He was not an assemblyman at that time, though.
No, he was a
presume.
teacher. Yeah.
He was a teacher.
He was a teacher. Yep. And then so they founded the paper in 81. And then a few years later, Mike went back to teaching, but John continued with the paper. I guess it was in 2006.
Okay.
John, who had taken on a partner, David Keesman.
I remember David.
Sold the paper to News Corporation.
I remember that.
Was buying all of the community newspapers. So then a few years after that, the Goodsteins then bought the paper from...
and here we are.
So I think it's 2018 that Schneps bought.
As editor of the paper, when you wake up on presumably a weekday and you come into work, what is it that you're saying to yourself, this is what I want to do today, or this is what we want?
It's in my blood. I mean,
you don't say it to yourself anymore.
No, I just love newspaper work, and I just always loved it. We did this year hire a new editor. So Christian Falcone is our new editor,
right.
And he's really beefed up our digital presence. I
want to ask you about that, and I mean, we've had to convert now to working out of our homes instead of being in the studio. But the challenge for newspapers, where you're used to giving out papers, now I don't want to say it's old fashioned, because I still get the hard paper in my hand.
Right.
But you have a revamped website that's frankly pretty good. If you're interested in the Bronx, click around.
Absolutely.
Is that a challenge?
Well, for someone like me, it is really original. You know, our age group, it took us a while. You know, so having the younger people, like I said, Chris Falcone, we have Robbie Secure, we have Jason Cohen. Those are our other reporters.
Jason is prolific as anybody who's ever written paper, you know,
Absolutely.
For papers in the Bronx.
Absolutely.
I mean, I read it and I say, well, who wrote this? And it's like, oh, Jason wrote it. Oh,
Right.
Jason.
Right.
And Robbie is getting there too.
Yeah.
All right. So before we run out of time, let's go back to Demetra and Tony, and let's talk. So when is the event? The event is December 15th.
Correct. So if you go to bronxpowerlist.com, it'll give you additional information. But verbally, I will say it is September 15th, 5 to 9 p.m. 5 to 6 will be our VIP hour for just our Powerlist honorees to meet and greet with each other.
And by the way, this will be done in person?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, we are doing this event in person. It will be at Maestro's.
Okay.
It will be on, again, December 15th. And our domain is bronxpowerlist.com. So we welcome everyone to join in and send in their nominations.
And how long are the nominations going to be open?
They'll be open until November 15th.
Okay, so right now is the time we're talking.
Yeah.
And we're going to generate it. You can read the paper and read about it and
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
And honestly, we already have 30 honorees lined up. So the minute we hit our max, we will be closing nominations, but we do want everyone to feel able that they can join in and send in their nominations.
Yeah, let's not think of the word close. Let's say it's open right
It's
now.
open for now. Come on.
All right, let's do it now, Laura. What do you got? Special editions coming up? You got something interesting coming up?
Well, we just had a 52-page 9/11.
Oh,
20th anniversary, so that was a very big edition. But yes, we have our pink paper coming up.
Oh, that's very important.
Yes, that we've done that for several years now. So that'll be coming up in the beginning of October.
And it's pink
for breast cancer.
Commemoration for breast cancer, and understand that this is a very important issue.
Correct.
All right, listen, guys, thank you so much. Demetra Mattone, Tonia Cimino from Schneps Media, my buddy Laura Guerriero from the Bronx Times Reporter. Thanks so much for all the great work you do. Let's nominate, let's participate. Go online, bxtimes.com, and you'll be able to read the paper. And we'll one Bronx. There we are. We'll do it right around the Bronx Times and Bronx Net Television. Of course.
That's right.
There we go. Anyway, thanks, folks. And again, thank you to Ben Adler from, he's the climate editor of Yahoo News for the first part of our show. And guess what? We'll see you next week. Good night.